It's one of the grossest pieces of so-called journalism you're going to see. Good morning. Happy Monday. It is good to be here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM, and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Great way to listen once you get to the office or KCMOTalkRadio.com. Could you imagine the Kansas City Star putting together a piece about, let's say, one of the local goobers or thugs, I'll use that word, thugs, it's a non-racial term, that, let's say, did something heinous at the United States Capitol on January 6th, 2021, right? I'm not talking about, people that just moseyed on into the Capitol. I'm talking about someone who was like breaking windows, committing crimes, assault against Capitol Police. Like, imagine, and, there were people there that day from the area. The Star still writes about them and makes some headline news every single day. Imagine if they wrote a piece about one of those individuals titled, "Not a Monster. Family of Bob Smith charged in January 6th riot speaks out." Do you think that headline would ever be written by the Kansas City Star? Of course not. Instead, here's what they wrote over the weekend about Lindell Mays, who has been charged with second-degree murder in the shooting at the Super Bowl parade. The Kansas City Star writes here, "Not a monster. Family of Lindell Mays charged in Chiefs rally shooting speaks out." We are not even 2 weeks removed from this tragedy. And the Kansas City Star is writing sympathy pieces about the alleged shooter who killed Lisa Lopez Galvin. Just when you thought that this local media outlet and entity could not get any more embarrassingly pathetic, they do. They find a way. And I'm not going to lie, that's tough. It's tough for these hucksters to find a way to get more pathetic than they already are. But they amazingly do it on a daily basis. A week and a half out of the Super Bowl parade shooting, and they're doing puff pieces on the shooter, the alleged shooter. Oh, my goodness. They write here, the first thing the family members of Lindell Mays wants the community to know is that they're sorry people were hurt in the mass shooting at the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl victory rally on Valentine's Day. The second thing is that they believe he acted in self-defense. Yeah, sorry about, people that got hurt and the person that died. And, oh, by the way, what about the thousands of Kansas Cityans who I have heard from? I mean, I've gotten emotional texts from parents that I know, personal texts, who took their kids down there that day and whose kids, elementary, middle school kids, are still traumatized by what they experienced that day. They say that every night their kids go to bed and ask them about the bad guys at the Super Bowl rally. I was talking to a guy over the weekend about it. He's got 2 boys, and he said they still, 2 weeks later, are asking every night before they go to bed. They're having trouble sleeping because of what they experienced that day. And instead of writing about them, Kansas City Star is going to the family of the guy who allegedly killed Lisa Lopez Galvin and writing about how he's not a monster, claims the family. No, he is a monster. I hate to break it to you, he is. You open up your weapon with thousands of innocent people around you who are in danger of getting killed. Never mind the trauma, in danger of getting killed by you. You are a monster. By the you're also a thug. I know we had to define that word last week, too. What is a thug? You're a thug and you're a monster. How about that? You're both. We'll check off both boxes while we're at it here on KCMO 95.7 FM. You're all the above. And I don't know what's worse, the lack of self-awareness from the family or the Kansas City Star actually having the audacity to write something like this. Mays, 23, they put here, was one of 2 men charged this week with second-degree felony murder in the shooting that injured 24 people and killed Lisa Lopez Galvin. And by the way, there's a fundraiser for Lisa Lopez Galvin, who was laid to rest, on our website at kcmotalkradio.com. Mays' father says, "We're so sorry for what happened to Lisa Lopez Galvin and her family. Our heart goes out to them," adds Mays' sister. The two sat down with the Kansas City Star to talk about the events that unfolded February 14th. They asked their names not be published because they said they have been receiving threats and fear for their safety. Welcome to the club. I'm not saying that's right, but are we supposed to, sympathize with that? I mean, no one should be doing that, by the way. No one should be threatening family members of people who committed allegedly heinous acts. But, I mean, is that supposed to be a sympathy sentence there? Is that what that's about? They said Lindell Mays, who grew up in Raytown, is a good person who loves his family, animals, and playing video games. He struggled with a learning disability and did not finish high school. Sometimes they said he had comprehension problems. His family supported him because he did not have a job. Oh, my goodness. Where's the freaking violin? Holy crap. Break out the violin music for me, Mark. Find something good for me as we, continue this story. He was a boy, He was just on his way to volunteer at the homeless shelter and help the old ladies cross the street. But then the gun that someone put in his jacket fell out and randomly decided to fire off. Oh, boy, play the violin. You've got to be kidding me. This is embarrassing. Kansas City Star, you don't have to defend an alleged murderer. Oh, thank you very much there, Mark. Little fast-paced, but, I'll take it for the moment. It's okay, Kansas City Star, you don't have to defend an alleged murderer. It's okay to admit they did a terrible thing, regardless of if their family claims that's not them. This is such a new low. And if you're working for this newspaper, you should be embarrassed to be associated with them. That's how just awful this is. Oh, gosh. Thank you very much there, Mark. I never thought we'd have the violin playing on this show, but here we are. The family claiming that Lindell Mays is not a monster. He had recently completed probation after displaying a gun in the 2021 at a Belton Community Center. So that's the other thing they add here. Mays' sister was with him at the rally. The two were excited, as were hundreds of thousands of other fans, to celebrate the Chiefs' victory over the 49ers. Yep, just innocent young guy going down to the rally, loaded with a weapon, allegedly, potentially to an illegal weapon, and just there to have a good time, celebrate the Chiefs. What could possibly go wrong? Unbelievable. And then it goes on to explain where he was standing. They claim it was self-defense. Here's what they write here. Standing at Pershing and Kessler Roads, they noticed a group of young men heading towards them. It made Mays uncomfortable. The group of guys kept staring. They asked him if he knew who they were. He said no. They made their way up to us in a crowd full of people. They were looking hostile. They said, "What are you looking at?" He got more nervous. Then they were standing in front of each other. There were at least 4 of them, she said. Another had a red hoodie. One of them had a Chiefs jacket. One of them had dreadlocks, she says. This is the sister of Lindell Mays. 2 of them had backpacks. They were intimidating him. She said the group was hyped up. She tried to de-escalate the situation, telling them they didn't want any problems. The charging documents filed by the Jackson County prosecutor accused Mays in the shooting, saying he pulled out a gun believed to have been stolen first. His sister said she wasn't sure about that. She said they approached us. They were the aggressors. Wow. Didn't deny it, though, that he pulled out his weapon first and fired.
Nervous, huh?
Yeah.
I've seen situations like that develop. Nervous isn't a word that usually pops in there in the verbiage that gets exchanged.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
What are you looking at?
Yeah.
You don't know who I am. Et cetera, et cetera. You don't know where I'm from. I think.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the way it goes.
That's another one, right? Yep.
Right.
913-408-7957. Jonathan in Kansas City. Go ahead, Jonathan. Good morning. Jonathan going once, Jonathan going twice, and Jonathan is there or not. 3, 2, And one. Well, you know what? I was pushing it anyway. I was getting yelled at for taking that call a little late in the break, so probably for the best. 913-408-7957. We will get to you coming up on KCMO Talk Radio. What's your message to the Kansas City Star? Text line 913-408-7957. Pete, it sounds like the Kansas City Star is being paid by Lindell Mays' legal defense team, maybe wanting to influence possible jurors in Kansas City. Who knows? But everyone's going to be claiming self-defense here. As John and I just discussed during the break briefly, don't forget that Fox 4 ran this story last week about Dominic Miller. He's the other adult who has been charged in this case. He's the one who allegedly fired the weapon that ultimately killed Lisa Lopez Galvin at the Super Bowl parade. And Fox 4 last week interviewed one of his buddies.
He was the guy that got shot and his jaw was wired shut.
Yeah.
So on the interview, he's kind of talking through gritted teeth, right?
Yes.
So there was some video with that story.
Mm-hmm. And he's the one who claims that Dominic Miller was acting in self-defense. So everyone's acting in self-defense, apparently, according to the people close to those who have been charged with second-degree murder. Everyone's a self-defender here. That's all. You see, big misunderstanding. He started yapping at me. No, you started yapping at me, and we're going to point the finger, and everyone's acting in self-defense. In the meantime, one innocent lady has lost her life, and 24 other people have been injured, and thousands of Kansas Cityans are dealing with some type of trauma in the wake of what happened 2 weeks ago on Wednesday. And the Kansas City Star is writing puff pieces on Lindell Mays and how he's actually a really good guy. And if it wasn't for, people coming up to him and acting aggressive, he would have been helping old ladies cross the street at Union Station after the parade. I mean, spare me the nonsense. Gosh, they are just so embarrassing every day. And it didn't stop there. I just want to remind you about how much this supposed newspaper of record can't stand law enforcement in our community at large, not just KCPD, but at large. This was their headline story yesterday. Fatal crash and police chase doesn't count, Kansas says, because it was on purpose. They write here that when a Bonner Springs police officer began chasing a man in June of 2021 for an expired license plate, speeds on I-70 escalated 100 miles an hour. Then the officer intentionally hit the car to bring the chase to an end. A maneuver called a tactical vehicle intervention. The driver, Daryl Vincent of KCK, was ejected and ultimately killed. In an odd loophole, Vincent's death is not counted in statewide or federal statistics on police chases because the officer purposely struck his car. That officials choose not to include injuries or deaths caused by deliberate actions by police is one example of how police chases are not reliably counted by state or federal authorities. They then quote Darius Vincent, Daryl Vincent's son, who said, "I think that's wrong because it was a chase. It cost him his life, and I just don't think that was a good thing. It was a very bad thing." No, it's a really bad thing? Leading police on a 100-mile-an-hour car chase around innocent drivers who are just minding their own business. That's a very bad thing. It's sad that Daryl Vincent lost his life over Father's Day weekend in 2021 over this tactical vehicle intervention. It is. I mean, it's sad. It's sad that it happened. I'm not sitting here, not having empathy for a family that lost a loved one. But at the same time, what if Mr. Vincent had lost control of his own car and an innocent family was, God forbid, injured or even worse because he led police on a 100-mile-an-hour chase on I-70? What would we be saying then? Who knows? The cops may have saved lives by doing what they did with that tactical vehicle intervention. It's entirely possible. And, of course, they downplay this in the Kansas City Star because what he was being chased for is an expired license plate. Well, once again, you have somebody who had an expired license plate. Fine. Not the biggest deal in the world. There's obviously much worse that's happening. However, the bigger mistake is not the expired license plate. The bigger mistake is then deciding I'm going to go 100 miles an hour on I-70 and run from the police and put not just dozens, but maybe hundreds of others at risk as you're flying in and out of traffic and in and around other vehicles who are just minding their own business. That's the more egregious part of this. And, the Star then goes on to note, national experts recognize that pursuits are inherently dangerous and recommend restricting them to drivers suspected of committing violent felonies who present an imminent threat to the public. I would argue that going 100 miles an hour, weaving in and out of traffic on I-70, is what I would call, John, an imminent threat to the public.
I'm with you there. I wasn't born yesterday. I'm thinking that seems to be an imminent threat of a guy weaving around, blowing by me.
Yeah. And by the way, if we have this attitude of, it's just expired tags.
Expired tag.
Well, it's just an expired license plate. If we catch them one day, we catch them. What are we going to do about it? They are advocating for lawlessness. To be very clear, that's what the Kansas City Star does every day. Whether it's the Lindell Mays piece about how he's not a monster. He's just a good brother and kid who had some troubles in school, and he had a gun at a Super Bowl parade and allegedly was the first one to open up fire. But he's a really good guy. He'd be helping at the homeless shelter if it wasn't for things going haywire after the parade. Please, or it's this nonsense ragging on police for potentially saving lives. Not that you need any reminders of this, but just understand what still one of the more prominent media outlets in this community advocates for, and that is lawlessness and sympathy for alleged criminals and murderers. And anyone who would give them a dime for a subscription, wow.